Hi, everyone. Good evening. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Brianna Doherty. I'm the Executive Assistant for the New Jersey Commission on Holocaust Education. Sorry, the dog behind me is making a bunch of noise. The core mission of the New Jersey Commission on Holocaust Education is to promote Holocaust and genocide education in the state of New Jersey for all students, kindergarten through 12th grade. We provide professional development to educators, resources for your classroom, and curriculum guides for the classroom. This program is to launch our newest resource for New Jersey educators, and that is our Speakers Bureau. This group is a group of individuals that are trained speakers that are available to come to New Jersey schools and or organizations to educate on the Holocaust, genocide, and human rights. We will be adding more speakers in the next few weeks, so please check out the page on our website for more information. I'm going to post the website and the commission's contact info in the chat during the program. Now to get on with the program, the moderator for tonight is Irvin Moreno Rodriguez. Irvin is newly appointed to the New Jersey Commission on Holocaust Education and is the program assistant for the Sarah and Sam Schofer Holocaust Resource Center at Stockton University. Irvin, thank you for moderating for us tonight. I know we're all looking forward to tonight's program.
Thank you, Brianna. And I want to thank every single participant tonight. I know that it is a long week in Holocaust and genocide studies and education. And I know that participating tonight takes a lot of time and effort. And I just want to reiterate really a special thank you to everyone who decided to speak tonight. We'll get on with the program because I know we have a list of participants and they all have important stories and messages to share with each and every single one of us here tonight. So I will first introduce Maud Dam. Maud, and her bio reads, of the 1.6 million Jewish children who lived in Europe before World War II, only 100,000 survived the Holocaust. Most were hidden children. Maud was one of these children, hidden from the Nazis by righteous Gentiles in the Netherlands. Maud's story is the story of hope, courage, and bravery, and she will definitely inspire all of us tonight. Maud?
Thank you. The very first thing that we wanted to talk about this evening, each of us will speak about why we wanted to, what made us want to work for the Holocaust Commission. And I felt it's not working so much for the commission, but helping the commission and being able to be out there and for the survivors that are on the commission to tell their stories and for the others to participate. And we have done so much. I've been on the commission since 1982. When it was first created as an advisory council on Holocaust education with Governor Tom Kean. And we have done so much over the years. And the more I want to work with the commission and do things with the commission like everyone else to really bring Holocaust education in schools. As you know, it's now been mandated, so that it is very important. The commission has done so much already, even all the curriculum that has been developed from kindergarten through 12th grade, so many things. One other thing, the commission also sponsored a trip to the Holocaust sites in Europe for teachers. So we have done many, many things. And I think so many things that we're doing really benefits teachers and also from that, most importantly, our students, who are learning so much about the Holocaust, and especially today, being in the pandemic, it's a very difficult time. And I think it's so important because there is much anti-Semitism that has risen up over the last few years. So I think for the Holocaust Commission to bring the story and all of us participating with it, I think is very, very important.
And Maud, why do you think Holocaust education is important, and how does it benefit students, let's say primarily in New Jersey?
I think it's very important. but I also think it really benefits the students because they learn a lot. And there's so much that happened during that time that I think we can instill in the students. Because I see it, I do a lot of speaking, so much of sharing our stories with students to learn and also to teach them to respect. And also, especially now, for students to be very thankful for what we have. So I think there is just so much that students benefit. And I think the students of the teachers who go on the trip really benefit. And I have been amazed at the work that these teachers have done. It's super. And to them, they have heard Holocaust survivors in their classroom for an hour. They have seen the films and they have shared the curriculum with their students. But for the teachers to actually be there, to see it, to smell it, every one of them says it has changed them forever. And then when they go back into the classroom, they really firsthand really share so much of their knowledge that they have learned, and doing projects with students has been very, very, I'm just so happy that all this has been so very, very positive for the students and the teachers.
Now, Maud, I hope that you will be able to tell us a little bit more about your story. And hopefully you can also talk about why the governor recently had a piece of chocolate, and so did I. But we'd love to hear more about your story. And of course, the book that you have written.
It's very interesting about the chocolate. Well, I was born and raised in the Netherlands and spent from 1942 to 1945 with my little sister hiding at 2 different addresses. People were willing and to hide us at the risk of their own lives. And my sister and I survived, and we discovered my parents also survived. And after the war, we were reunited, even though I didn't remember them. I was 9 years old after the war. But we were able, however, we lost all the rest of our family. As a matter of fact, all my family, my grandparents, my aunt, my uncle, my little cousins all perished in Sobibor. And so one of the things that happened the day we were freed in a little fishing village, our last hiding place, soldiers were throwing out chocolate. And I was handed a piece of chocolate, didn't know what it was, but somebody shoved a piece in my mouth and I thought, I really like chocolate. So the book, the title of my book is Chocolate, The Taste of Freedom. And I did a program over Hanukkah with the governor and told a little bit about my story and then told them about the chocolate. And they said they would have a piece of chocolate every time they think they have a piece of chocolate, they're going to think of me. As a matter of fact, for my birthday yesterday, I received a text from Governor Murphy and wishing me a very happy birthday. And then I wrote him back and thanked him so much and also told him to celebrate my birthday. I wanted him and his wife to eat a piece of chocolate. And he said, will do. So it's my story. Yes, it was very traumatic for a child to go through that. And I think also when I speak to students, they can relate to that also, as they are children, as I'm a child, and what I went through. And I can see by what the students write afterwards, after I've made a presentation, that I've reached them in many ways, very sometimes lower grades in very simple ways, but I have reached the students. And I think that is the most important part when survivors speak, is to reach out, because all these genocides are mainly over ethnic and religious differences and not respecting each other. When I tell my story, I'm more positive than negative, because I talk about how these people risked their lives to save us and how important that was, because I'm here today because of that.
And Maud, you became a force in education, particularly in the state of New Jersey, but I think internationally as well. You held a variety of local and state positions. You became a passionate advocate of Holocaust education, and you were featured in a PBS documentary. What is the title of the PBS documentary? And then afterwards, if you could talk a little bit about your journey here to the United States, which I think is very important for first generation students in the United States to hear.
Well, the documentary was done by NJN, which was New Jersey's public television station at that time. And it's called The Hidden Child. And it is a PBS, of course, a PBS documentary. It's actually online. Everyone can view it online. Rutgers University has put it online, and I'm hoping that at the end of this program that Brianna, you will put on the documentary and also the title of the book. Coming to the United States was very difficult. I could not speak English, and the only thing I knew on the boat coming over here was I knew the 48 or 50 states. I don't remember how many there were in 1950, and their capitals. That was it. And it was difficult all over again to start school in the Netherlands at 9 in first grade and then to come here. But it all turned out okay. And I have always been so dedicated to public education because I felt I was denied this during the war. I couldn't go to school. I had to leave school. So public education was always on my mind. And I ran for a local board and served 7 years. And then I spent 24 years on the New Jersey State Board of Education. And I'm very much also involved with migrant education. So I think that's it. It's kind of hard to sit here and talk all about yourself, how wonderful you are.
Well, you're more than wonderful. You're extraordinary. You changed my life, and I know that you've changed the lives of thousands, hundreds of thousands of students. And I do want to mention how you met your husband. I think you always talk about that, and I really want the audience to know about that because you like talking about the positive, and so do I. Do you want to talk about?
Well, after high school, I had to go to work, and I worked for Pan American World Airways. I met my husband there. I came in the US in 50. He came in 1951. We were the same age, and his dream was to become an airline pilot. And he did. It was rough, tough, but he was a captain for first for Mohawk Airlines and then US Airways. So we had no money, and we were married on television on a program called Bride and Groom, and it was wonderful. And I don't know what else. And we have 9 children. I mean, sorry, don't I? Oh my gosh, 4 children, 9 grandchildren, and I just became a great grandmother. So when I speak to students, I tell them too. I said Hitler tried to take down our family tree, but our tree is growing again. There's new branches and new blossoms. Life continues. Hitler did not succeed with us. So, and I really, I don't know. It's
wow.
All right.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And I know that we're running low on time, but I'm sure there are already questions for you in the chat. You've have gone back to Europe to retrace the steps of the history of the Holocaust and, of course, of your life story. And these are not with students necessarily, these are with educators. Could you just talk about that and how that has changed educators, particularly in New Jersey, who have gone on to Europe with you?
Well, I think it's been wonderful. And I must say also that at first it was many people, and slowly it became more and more teachers who became interested in this trip. And of course, as you know, the price keeps going up every year, and NJEA has been wonderful. Every year they support their teachers, and teachers end up paying about half the fare or the cost of the trip. And which has been wonderful because the teachers are very happy that they can afford to do this. And as I said before, they have learned so much of what they've learned to actually being at all these sites. And also, I also feel that they should learn a little about the culture. So we learned a little bit about the cities we're in too also. And so I think that the teachers, I think all the teachers will vouch for that have been on the trip. It has been a wonderful and a very moving experience for them.
And I know that things are different with the pandemic, but if educators are interested in the trip or learning more about the trip for the future, who should they contact?
They contact the Holocaust Commission.
And Brianna has put the information for the Holocaust Commission in the Zoom chat. The Zoom chat button is at the bottom of your screen. And I will also ask that you please pose all questions to Brianna through the Zoom chat box, like I said, at the button at the bottom of your screen. And thank you, Maud. Like I said, there are questions for you in the chat, but we will come back to you.
Okay. Thank you.
Next, I will move on to Abe Foxman. Abe Foxman was born in Poland in 1940. Abe was saved from the Holocaust by his Polish Catholic nursemaid, who baptized and raised him as a Catholic during the war years. His parents survived the war, but 14 members of his family were lost. Abe Foxman is world known as a leader in the fight against anti-Semitism, bigotry, and discrimination. Abe regularly speaks out on issues of global anti-Semitism, the war on terror, church and state-related issues, religious intolerance, and issues relating to the Holocaust in Israel. Abe is a passionate supporter of the State of Israel and a voice for peace in the Middle East. Abe, I'm going to ask you the first question. What made you want to work with the New Jersey Commission on Holocaust Education?
Well, I just joined. It was an invitation by the governor. So it's very difficult to say no to the governor when he reaches out and says, I'd like you to help me do this. So that's number one. Number two is I think every survivor has an obligation, has an imperative to bear witness, because we're not only bearing witness for ourselves, but we're bearing witness for those who didn't survive, to tell, to share who they were, what they were, and what they lived through and how they perished. So I think it's an obligation that each one of us has to do it, to teach, to tell, to explain, to share. So it's both an honor and an obligation.
Thank you, Abe. And the second question is, why do you think Holocaust education is important? And how do you think it benefits students?
Well, Erwin, there is so much ignorance out there. There's so much hate, there's so much lack of civility, polarism, extremism. So I think we have an obligation to teach and to educate what hate can do, what it can lead to. We're in a period now of such political turmoil and polarization that the Holocaust is being used and abused for political purposes in ways which are hideous. I don't know, I guess if you weren't a Holocaust survivor, when you hear a Robert Kennedy Jr. Talk about vaccinations, comparing it that Anna Frank had more options because she could hide, or for him to say, well, Holocaust victims, they could escape or they can hide. And we today, we can't hide from vaccines. It is so hideous. So at the best, it's ignorance. And at the worst, it's bigotry. And it's all out there. If you look at what's going on the internet and the anti-vax, the abuse of Holocaust, the trivialization of the Holocaust, again, is either based on ignorance, which we need to fight, or it is bigotry, which abuses it. So if nothing else, this is a reason for us to be out there, to educate, to remind, to teach what Anne Frank was really about, what the Holocaust was really about, what persecution was really about. And it's not about a vaccination, for God's sake.
Wow, thank you. And can you tell us a little bit more about your story?
I'd rather listen to Maud. That's to follow, especially by another hidden child. Although I guess all of us, survived. The hidden children survived because of the passion, compassion, love, courage, heroism of an individual or two who, for whatever reason, risked their lives. Because in Poland, if you were non-Jewish and you were caught hiding and harboring a Jew, it was execution for you and your family. So in other countries, it was a little different. So the decision, at least in Poland, for my nanny to make the decision to take me. But things, they're not as simple as all that. My parents, we lived in Warsaw as the war started. They moved east. They moved to where my father's family was. It was Baranovich. It was then Poland. Today it's Belarus. That's where I was born. They had a sense. Some people understood, some people didn't. They decided to move east. And they moved east with me as an infant. The Germans caught up with them in the city of Vilna, the capital of Lithuania. An order was set out that all Jews report to a ghetto. I was with my nanny and my parents. And my nanny said to my parents, you go. It'll be a couple of weeks. I'll take care of them. They made that decision. And I guess, Maud and I can talk about it personally. For parents to make a decision, some weren't even given the opportunity, but for parents to make the decision to give away their child, to save that child. But at that moment, I don't think they visualized that it would be 4 years. As much as they thought they understood, they didn't understand. So the 4 weeks or 4 months turned out to 4 years. My parents separately survived. They came back looking for me, finding each other. The story took a different turn. My nanny said, I saved him, he belongs to me. We had a custody battle under the Soviets. My parents won that custody battle. It was bittersweet because my nanny risked her life to save my life. She didn't only save my life, she saved my parents' lives, because a family unit of 3 under Nazi occupation in Poland had a -0 chance of survival. But the fact that they knew I was being protected and their only hope was to survive for me, and the fact that they were separated and they can all each take different risks, was the major factor, plus a miracle. I believe in God's miracles and God's intervention, but that's what saved us all. Sadly, though, I never was able to say thank you to her, because we had to smuggle borders. I was kidnapped. My parents kidnapped me back. But Maud, your chocolate story reminded me, my taste of liberation when the Soviet soldiers finally, I was a 5-year-old, they gave me a glass of vodka. So I guess that's what I should be doing on my birthdays and all happy occasions. Because for you it was chocolate, for me it was vodka. But Erwin, I would say the 2 messages, and I absolutely agree with Maud. I think we survived not to tell about brutality and bestiality and hate. I think we survived, and we have an obligation, yes, to tell what we survived, but how we survived. I think that's a more important lesson for the future. So to me, I have 2 messages. One message is that words matter. Words matter. In the Jewish tradition, we believe that life and death is in the power of the tongue. Orthodox Jews that pray 3 times a day ask the Almighty, Nitzor Lishonim Mira, keep my mouth from speaking evil. On Yom Kippur, we ask for your atonement against words of hate and evil. The gas chambers in Auschwitz did not begin with bricks, they began with words. So words are important. And evil words brought about the creation of the gas chambers. And the absence of good words, of no, permitted the evil, hateful words to go in the direction they went. And the second lesson that I think is so important for us, those of us who miraculously and through the courage and passion and love of others, is to share the fact that wherever and whenever good people stood up to say no, Jews lived, gypsies lived, gays lived, union leaders lived, Christian leaders lived, that it wasn't true that people couldn't do anything. It took courage, absolutely. But whenever people stood up, people lived. And so my question is, what if instead of one Raoul Wallenberg or one Oskar Schindler, there were 10,000? And that's my lesson. That's my message, that everybody could make a difference. And you can make a difference by standing up and saying no to a bully, no to an ethnic or racist or anti-Semitic joke. That's where it begins. It takes courage. I don't know, and the haunting question to all of us was, would I have had the courage that my nanny had? I don't know. I don't know. But I would hope that the values that my parents instilled in me, my faith instilled in me, would be that I would be an upstander and not a bystander. So that's my message. That's what I hope to communicate to children, to students, to teachers, because we all can make a difference. And that's a marvelous thing to know. And you can save lives. You can even save lives.
Wow. Thank you so much. I will definitely remember that quote about Auschwitz for many years to come. But as a first generation American, I think it's always been my dream to meet the President of the United States, and as well as my parents. But you have met several presidents and you've served under them. And I just want to ask you, can you talk about your transition here to the United States growing up as a new American? I think it's an important question to ask, especially for our students here in the state of New Jersey.
Well, I share Maud's experience. I came to the country, I was 10. I remember the words that I'm pleased to make your acquaintance. That was the totality of my English vocabulary. My parents had greater difficulties, so I became the translator. I was the one who went shopping. I was the one, in the first certainly year or two, till they were, able to communicate in English. Employment for them was very difficult, without a language, my father was a journalist, my mother was a mother, she had no skills. It was very tough, without a language, without skills. My father, his first job was at 5 o'clock in the morning to sweep the garage of there used to be Pechter's Bakery. He would go from one garage to the other to sweep out the garage, because he had no skills except being a Yiddish writer or historian, which didn't go very far. So it was tough. I remember in school, as a 10-year-old, they put me in the first grade. Ironically, when finally my classmates, learned a little bit about me, they were jealous of me because I had an interesting childhood. And I was jealous of them that they had in their vocabulary, Seda and Bubby, Granny and Grandpa, because I had no grandfather and grandmother. I had no aunts and uncles. I had no brothers and sisters. So it was an adjustment. But you know what? Thank God, I grew, I went to day school. I went to City College. I went to NYU Law School. I became an attorney. I wound up heading up an organization. What a dream, what a dream. I headed up an organization which fights bigotry, anti-Semitism, and hate. So I lived my adult life for 50 years dealing with the two elements that were part of my life: fighting hate, anti-Semitism, which almost destroyed me, and trying to build understanding and tolerance and respect, because that's what saved me. So I live the American dream. I'm still living the American dream. And getting a call, the First Lady of New Jersey called me. And today, because of all the telephones that you get, I was ready to hang up on her because, what are you selling now? She says, no, I'm the first lady of New Jersey. Don't hang up. I'm calling on behalf of the governor. Will you serve? Wow. And I've had the privilege of meeting and working with presidents. Who could have believed a little boy from Baranovich who barely survived? It is an American dream, and it's everybody's American dream. Sometimes it's a little tougher. It's a little tougher when immigrants are being discriminated against and being singled out. But America is still the greatest country in the world.
Wow. Thank you so much, Abe. And I know we're going to move on, but there are also questions for you. So please be patient with us tonight. And we're going to move on to our next speaker, participant, Marvin Robb. And in October 1943, Marvin's mother, Esther Robb, took on the Nazis in a dangerous and daring revolt in Sobibor, a death camp in eastern Poland. She and Marvin have dedicated their lives to teaching children around the world about what happened in Sobibor. So Marvin, like Maud, like Abe, I will start off with what made you want to work with the New Jersey Commission on Holocaust Education?
Well, thank you for having me. I've been a commissioner for over 20 years. I've been on school boards and federation boards, but I never was satisfied with what was occurring. Joining the commission and seeing the influence it has on children is astonishing. I mean, I've traveled to schools all over the states and Holocaust centers, and to see the impact that we have as the commission, changing the minds of these young people, is just astounding. So to me, it is extremely rewarding.
And Marvin, why do you think Holocaust education is important now? And how does it benefit our students?
Well, I think it's important to teach children about the historical events. The Holocaust is more than that. We're teaching children to change their thinking of how they look at other people. We want to know that a lot of the individuals that died in the Holocaust had dreams and hopes just like us, but it was taken away from them. So it's important to understand how this started. It started just with name calling. Simple thing, segregating out a group, making them feel different, and eventually turned to murder centers just because they believed in another religion or a different color. So I see that the education process, if taught correctly, the kids can learn and realize that what they say, what the harm it can do, what it can eventually happen. You need to learn to respect each other for what they are and admire the differences instead of looking at them and try to discriminate against them. By doing this, we can change, and we have changed many lives. We can make maybe a better world, because it continues to show that the world goes back to the hatred, and we need to continue training our students so that they understand that this is not the problem.
And I know that Maud and Abe are Holocaust survivors, but you are second generation after the Shoah. And would you mind telling us more about your parents and their life stories and how that has impacted your life?
Well, I am second generation. Both of my parents were survivors. My parents just, shielded me in the beginning as I was growing up, not letting me know the stories. They eventually, I would hear them in the room talking about events, and I would know certain stories, I would know certain things, but I never knew the whole story. not till I became an adult that I went to Poland with them. And we went through the whole story. We went to all the places my mother hid, my father's houses. But I get a real understanding of what really happened during the war. And what was interesting is, life in Poland was good. When my parents went back to Poland to visit their sites, you could see like an excitement on their face. And they would go by the synagogue where it was, or their houses, or my mother would say, this is where my cousin lived, and my father would say, this is where I went to school. Life was really good in Poland, or where my parents were. And so they looked at it in a very different way. But again, I would like to talk about my mother specifically in this case. My mother was only 17 years old when the war broke out. They came from a town called Chelm, Poland. It's famous for the wise men of Chelm. There really is a town of Chelm, Poland. It's near the Russian border. She grew up in a normal middle-class family in Poland. I cover in my presentation when I speak about my mother what she endured over the next 5 years, losing her parents and being moved from ghetto to ghetto until she was brought to the notorious death camp Sobibor. She was selected out of the group by a German officer because she claimed she could knit, and she could knit well. She worked sorting clothes and knitting for 9 months until they escaped from Sobibor. At this time, if Erwin, you could just put on the video.
Yes. I'm just going to share my screen.
Maybe you'll survive. Maybe you'll be able to tell the world what happened. Felt we don't have what to lose. We have to do something. We started organizing, we started planning. The first one that they killed was a high-ranking officer. He came in, and they had knives ready, and that's how it started. Here it's already 3 killed, 4 killed. We killed 12. 12 Nazis.
Those of you who survive, bear witness. Let the world know what has happened here. God is with you. Now let nothing stop you.
Everybody started running in a different direction. I saw somebody put up a step ladder, and I jumped up on that step ladder, and while I jumped down, I got a bullet here, and the blood started gushing, and coming down. I survived, and I talk about it, and I build up a family that I can be proud of. I have 2 sons.
During World War II, Sobibor was the only death camp or military POW camp that had a prison breakout. There were 300 work prisoners in the camp. It was purely a death camp, and only 150 escaped, and only 50 survived the war. Obviously, my mother was one of them. The story continues with her hiding until the end of the war and her final liberation by the Russian army. My mother was responsible for identifying the gas master after the war and participated as a witness at his trial in 1950. He also went to trials for other Nazis who ran Sobibor throughout the 60s and 70s, provided testimony what they had done. You can see my mother was a fighter and would not forget what happened at Sobibor. She's included as a character, obviously, in the movie, Escape from Sobibor. He was used as a consultant when the movie was made. There's a play called Dear Esther about her that's played not only in this United States, but all over the world. It was even shown at the United States Holocaust Museum. If you go on to the U.S. Holocaust Museum in Washington, at the end of the tour, they have a room where they have Holocaust survivors giving testimony. My mother is one of the people on the screen. My mother has dedicated her life to keep the promise, talking about the escape and telling the world what happened there. We fought back and won, and I am continuing to keep the promise going.
Wow. Thank you so much, Marvin. And I want to ask about after the war. Now, this pertains to the South Jersey Holocaust Survivor Project that the Sarah and Sam Schofer Holocaust Resource Center is undertaking right now, which is archiving the life stories of Holocaust survivors from Cape May, Cumberland, and Atlantic counties. And your mother is in the project, and it involves chicken farming. And I want you to talk about their journey owning these chicken farms and then what happened after.
Yeah, my parents, my mother actually went to Germany and opened up a store and became pretty well to do. They came to America. My father was looking for a job. Language was a real serious problem. You know, he got jobs in factories, but he was actually born into a very wealthy family. And, you know, he knew that he needed to do something more. So he took friend of his called him up, said, listen, you need to come to Vineland. There's opportunity here for survivors. There's a lot of us here, and you know, you can find a home here. So he came for 2 weeks, reviewed it, and he determined this was the right place. He decided to buy a farm because he said the chickens understood Yiddish, and that way he could speak to them whenever he could do. He's a hardworking man. He not only had a farm, but he worked nights, vaccinations, chickens, just to make a living and to try to broaden himself. What happened was that most of the people that came there weren't farmers, and they ran away, left the farms because they couldn't make a living with it. My father kept pressing, and eventually he merged with Shohei, which is a ritual slaughter, and opened up a chicken plant where he employed 300-400 people and actually made a go of it. So, you know, Vineland was a special town. Like Abe said and Maud said, you know, we didn't have much family. I didn't have grandparents. I didn't have cousins. I didn't have uncles. I didn't have anything. But being with other survivors that were in the same position, we all considered them relatives. So even to this day, when I see some of them that are still alive, they treat me like I'm a cousin, nephew. It's just a remarkable feeling when I go there. So, Vineland really offered, and the chicken farm offered us, you know, a lot of good opportunities.
And I know Esther also was a speaker. Can you talk a little bit more about to what school she went to, and you know, what message did she leave the students with?
Well, what happened is after Escape from Sobibor aired, at the end, when you see her running at the end, they mentioned that she's from New Jersey. And a lot of resourceful teachers found out that she lived in Milan, contacted her and said to her, you know, we'd like you to come speak. And all of a sudden, she started going to all these schools, telling her story. And basically, you know, my mother's story is not just defiance. It was also, she said, you know, she was brought up religious, but she went to Catholic school. And some of the people in the Catholic school saved her. She says, you know, if you treat people right, they will go on the limb for you. And all through her story, you'll see even where she's hidden. You know, it was one of my father was a grain dealer, and he had helped this baker, you know, out with giving him grain and extending him credit. Well, the baker is the one that ends up saving them. So, you know, it shows you that if you treat people, and again, for people to do these things, they were putting your life on the line. And they could be, you know, I don't even know if I could do some of that, you know, like that. But to think that just because you treated somebody kind, that, you know, that they remembered that, they felt an obligation to help. So it's a lesson that, you know, students learn, because that is the way it should be.
And Marvin, you shared a picture with me, which I'm going to share now. It's a row of books, and I don't know if you want to talk briefly about the books and the DVD that will be on everyone's screen right now. And if educators are interested in obtaining these books, how would they go about it for the classrooms?
These books, Escape from Sobibor, was written by Richard Roschke. He found my mother at the end. There's a section about what she did in the camp and what she did in the breakout. The movie Sobibor, you saw an excerpt of it. And then he set up what's called children's letters. As my mother went to speak at the schools and tell them her story, the children at the end wrote letters. And she accumulated literally thousands of letters. Richard Roschke, the author, came to visit my mother, and she said, you gotta read these letters. They're like amazing. I mean, the things that kids ask, I mean, you know, kids can ask things that adults cannot ask. And so consequently, he put together Dear Esther, which is a play, and shown all over the world, as I said before. But now we converted it into a book called Children's Letters to the Holocaust Survivor, Dear Esther. And basically, the children get the opportunity to play the characters in the play and understand what my mother went through the whole Holocaust situation. So what we're doing is taking these three books, the first three, children's and the video and the book, providing it to schools as a program, you know, a curriculum, so that children can learn about an individual and understand what that individual went through the Holocaust, instead of it being a picture of 6 million Jews or a crematorium. That's not the lesson we want to teach. We want to understand. People should understand. The other book was just a woman wrote my mother's story, provided to the religious Jewish community, and it's been on Amazon and it's available for sale.
And Marvin, if a teacher would like a set for their classrooms, who should they contact about that?
They can either reach out to me, you can put out my email address, I have my number, or Richard Roschke, the author, and we will make certain that if the teacher wants the book, we'll send them 30, 40 books, whatever they need, free of charge to use. The only criteria that we have is that they must send us letters so we know that the book, every year as the books are being used, the students have to write a letter to me or to Richard describing what they've learned.
Wow. And I do also want to ask, because Abe and Maud, it really touched home for me growing up as a new American, especially the part where Abe was talking about being the translator for his parents, which I was also one of my responsibilities growing up in Atlantic City, New Jersey. So, Marvin, I'm going to ask you, what was it like growing up as a new American here in the United States, especially with your parents as immigrants?
Well, my parents spoke 5 or 6 languages, but again, they spoke to me in Yiddish. I answered them in English so they could learn English. And that was the process how it went. My mother actually, when she came here, decided to go to high school, to get educated. She wanted to feel that she knew the language. They adapted quickly, but again, they used me as a vehicle and my brother as a vehicle to learn English.
And can you talk a little bit about growing up on a chicken farm? I know that that's not an experience that most people have, but did you take any lessons from it, and how did it stay with you throughout life? And are you still involved in the chicken industry?
Surprisingly, the answer is yes. I sell chickens to the live markets in New York. So I continued. I have other real estate companies and other things that I own, but again, my parents taught me that you have to work hard. That my father always said to me, the difference between you and me is the fact that I have no one to rely on. He says, I don't have parents that could. If I make a mistake in life, I have a serious problem. Whereas with you, you know that I always will back you, I'll help you, whatever you do. I learned my mother was willing to work hard physically. I mean, she was not a healthy woman, but she did whatever she had to do. Father did anything they had to do to provide us a good life. We always had clothing. We always went to good schools. But again, they really taught us that, they were not into like cars or anything like that. They were real basic people that just realized, wanted to extend their family. My parents really wanted grandchildren more than anything in the world. They wanted to know that their family was going to grow. My father and my mother, between them both, lost about 180 to 200 people, family members, cousins and uncles. I mean, like I said before in the beginning, when they were in Poland, they had a good life. They had been there for centuries. And, they had tremendous families. And for all of that to be gone, so their push was family. They pushed us hard to be educated, to do well. They expected certain things. The only thing that was interesting about my parents, and particularly my mother, I mean, I couldn't come home from school and say, I had a bad day. When I look at my mother after she went through a concentration camp, say I had a bad day. I mean, it was just expected you to do well, to succeed, to do the things, and not to complain. Life, whatever life sends you, you have to learn to deal with. Consequently, they were fearless. I mean, they just really were amazing people. And sadly, they're gone, but I miss them a lot. Great life. And one interesting thing I just want to say, when my mother was sick, at the end almost, and it's very weird. It was like they were not scared of dying. That was really amazing. I noticed from them. They had seen so much bloodshed, things that they had seen. They were not scared to die. They just thought that that's the way it is. I remember even seeing my father, like when my mother died. He just could, was able to, this was part of life. He kind of rationalized. Different than I saw other people that, lose a loved one, they fall apart. They didn't fall apart. It was just very interesting, watching them because after what they had gone through.
Wow. Thank you so much, Marvin, especially for taking the time to remember your mother and father tonight. And I just want to reiterate Brianna's point that the purpose of tonight's conversation with Maud, Abe, and Marvin is that the New Jersey Commission on Holocaust Education has just started a speakers bureau, and they are a group of speakers that are available to go to New Jersey schools and or organizations to educate students and other members of the community on the Holocaust, genocide, and human rights. If you are interested in having Maud, Abe, or Marvin as one of your speakers at your school or organization, Brianna will put in the Zoom chat box the contact information. And I will now move on to the question and answer session. There have been many questions, but unfortunately we will not get to all of them here tonight. And so the first question is for Maud. Maud, you have made such an impact on students that have heard you speak and have read your memoir. Have there been any projects done by students that have made a certain impact on you?
I have not seen all the projects that the students have made, unfortunately, but I've seen some. We had a teacher, art teacher, and she did a whole thing with her students on butterflies. And another teacher who was also in the arts, she had all her students made shoes out of clay, and they had a whole exhibit in the school of that. So I think so many teachers have also had their students do more research and share it with the class. And so I think there's been so much that teachers have done with their students, which is absolutely amazing. So unfortunately, I've not seen all of them, and I've been doing the commission trip since 1999. So trying to think all the way back with everything, but we do have a record of it because usually teachers will submit it to the commission of what projects they have done.
And I know I'm being a little, let's say, cute here, but there's also a question for you. When did you join the commission? And could you talk a little bit more about how the New Jersey Commission on Holocaust Education was formed?
Well, I happened to read in a newspaper that Governor Kane was creating an advisory council on Holocaust education. And I had worked on his campaign. So I called the governor's office and I said, I would like to be on that. And they said, why? Who are you? And then they found out my background, and I have been on it ever since. And I watch it go from an advisory council to a formal commission. And then the commission also lobbied to make Holocaust education mandatory in the state of New Jersey. So there have been these ongoing things that commission has been able to do to really bring Holocaust education into the schools. And so, and I've been a part of it since I think I'm the only one on the commission right now who's maybe the oldest too, but also a person who's been on the commission the longest.
Wow, thank you so much. And Abe, this next question is for you. A educator in New Jersey is asking, what do you think is missing right now from Holocaust education?
Wow.
That's
the
tough.
ability to deliver the message.
It is a tough question, I'm sorry.
The ability to be able to deliver the message, the lessons to more people than we're able to do it now. It's limited in funding, it's limited. Holocaust education is mandated, I think, today in 6 or 8 states. There is no time, there is no money. Teachers don't have the funding, they're not giving the time. So it's one thing to say, let's do it, it's mandated. But unless it has support of the bureaucracy, of the people who decide what teachers should do, how much time they should spend, and to give them funding to do it. That's what's missing. The intent is there, the purpose is there, but not the means are what's missing. And so it's like Marvin Rams, who's making the books available. It's how many teachers can afford to pay for even half a trip. So that's what's missing. I think the knowledge is there, the desire is there, the talent is there. Survivors are becoming less and less, but we have videos, thank God, we have books. So there are ways of transmitting it, but it needs the funding and it needs the dedication to set it as a priority. That's what's missing. And by the way, we were chicken farmers too in Tom's River.
Oh, wow.
We didn't make it, Marvin, like you did. We left because we couldn't make a living. My father had to come to New York in order to pay the mortgage in New Jersey.
Once a chicken man, always a chicken man.
Yep, I used to go at night to vaccinate.
And Marvin, I'm not going to ask you about how to vaccinate a chicken, unfortunately. I know how difficult that was. But this last question is for you. There's an educator that has seen you speak to students, and she would like to talk to you more about your work with Yad Vashem.
Yes.
And if you could speak more to it.
Yes, it's very interesting. There are non-public schools, religious schools that, really do not have curriculum. So what happened is there are schools that basically a yeshiva or religious Jewish school, or even a Catholic school, whereas the principal goes to the teacher and says, listen, we want to teach Holocaust here, and we need you to develop a curriculum. So the teacher goes on the internet, pulls papers from here, there, and makes up a curriculum. The problem with that is that, she's not a professional at it, and she misses a lot. So my feeling was that we need to get a curriculum to these schools that they could utilize, that would be consistent and professionally done, so they could teach the students. I met with Yad Vashem, we talked, and they were sending over people to teach courses to these religious schools. We've done quite a few schools, not only in the state of New Jersey, but in Pennsylvania as well. And as time went on, I said to the head of Yad Vashem, I said, this is a real problem in America. And she says, and you have to hear this story, it's amazing. She said to me that the Israeli government went and did a testing to determine what the typical Israeli student knew about the Holocaust. And after the results came out, it came out that they really knew nothing, because they were teaching them purely about gas chambers and people being murdered, and pits where people were being shot, and the kids turned it off. They really didn't understand, or really didn't want to understand. So they went to Yad Vashem and says, listen, how could this be? We're the country of Israel, and we have students that don't really understand the Holocaust. So they said, you need to redevelop yourself, recreate. Yad Vashem determined that instead of talking about those things, we need to show the children what it felt like. As an example, the first day someone wears a star. Give an example. Everybody wore Nike sneakers to school, and you were the only kid in school that had to wear sandals. How would you feel? That's how it started. So when they hear Maud's story or Abe's story, they hear an individual story, whereas the other lessons that we hear historically is what the Germans wanted us to understand, and consequently, that resonates with the children. They understand that, and they can understand losing a parent, how you deal with it. How do you deal losing your siblings? How do you deal not having any cousins? How do you deal with death? Those are the things that children want to know, and that they can remember, and hopefully those are the things that will change their mind and make them a better person. So again, we provide, right now I'm working with Yad Vashem, we offer courses, 15 courses that can be where you have a Yad Vashem teacher class for, a half hour, 45 minutes. The only thing that we ask, because there's a 7-hour time difference, that you try to plan this in the morning. If you reach out to me, set it up for you. And you could have a Yad Vashem teacher come and teach a course. There's 15 choices. You can pick the choice you want. Or if there's something your children in your classroom want to know about or adults want to know about, we could then ask them to prepare a program for you, and they're willing to do it. So this is a real great opportunity, particularly for everyone to take advantage of. And please contact me if you are interested, and we'll set it up for you.
Erwin,
Yes.
comment on New Jersey history. Maud, I don't remember, maybe you probably were involved then, but I remember being involved that New Jersey, state of New Jersey, developed the first curriculum on the Holocaust in the United States. I remember being involved through the ADL, Anti-Defamation League, and I remember it being tested in Vineland and in Teaneck.
Yes.
And those were the two school systems that were picked and actually volunteered to help develop a curriculum for the state of New Jersey, which was the first Holocaust curriculum in the United States. But Marvin, I'm on the board of Yad Vashem, and I absolutely second it. It's available. It's a shame it's not being used. So it's there. It's good. It's been tested, and hopefully some of the people participating will reach out to you.
Wow. Yes, thank you so much. It has been really a special night for all of us here, including me. And I just want to remind everybody that unfortunately we did not get to all of your questions tonight. But what I would say is that the New Jersey Commission on Holocaust Education has now started the Speakers Bureau, and they are available to go to your school or your organization. Brianna has put the contact information in the Zoom chat. And I also want to remind everyone that Chocolate, the Taste of Freedom, the Holocaust Memoir of a Hidden Dutch Child by Maud, is also available for teachers and educators as classroom sets, as well as Marvin Rob's books that he helped facilitate with Richard Rashke. For example, Children's Letters to a Holocaust Survivor, Dear Esther. Again, I see Brianna has put the contact information in the chat. And once again, if you have any questions, please feel free to call the New Jersey Commission on Holocaust Education or email us at holocaust@doe.nj.gov. And I want to thank everyone tonight. Really, it has been a special night, and I am so glad that all of you were here to speak with us and to have this important conversation with us during these very trying times. So, Brianna, I don't know if you have anything to say before we all log off.
I just want to say thank you guys for coming. That was fantastic, and it was a wonderful launch to our Speakers Bureau. Just to reiterate, we are adding new speakers all the time, so check out the Commission website for more information. And that's it, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and have a good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good
Thank
night.
you so much for having us.